large ball games and concerts tonight. We can't do that. So I will pretend that this is a full room and be as formally informal as I can be. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't ask me any questions or that require me to clarify something. If you have a question about your child, that's harder because I don't know your kiddo. But if it will enable me to give you an example of what your child is experiencing in relation to working memory, I'll be glad to do that. All right? So we're going to be talking about this very special kind of memory, and as you'll see shortly, there are lots of kinds of memory. Many, many, many. But working memory, I deliberately entitled this way, You're Nothing Without It, because I've encountered boys and girls whose working memories are very poor, and it makes it extraordinarily hard for them to learn. And if we may well have enough time, then I'll show you a pattern of two 7th grade children, one who was considered a terrific student because she had the most extraordinary memory, and people didn't realize that's what she was doing, memorizing everything, and a boy who was underestimated for his intellect because his working memory was so weak that he couldn't hold on to information. But once he got it, oh my, what he could do with it. So I wanted to talk with you tonight about aspects of working memory and then give you some things that you can do at home, or don't want to get in trouble, but ask your teachers, your children's teachers, if they're doing those kinds of things, as it might work for you. So any of you who have children with an attention deficit disorder are likely to have a pattern of working memory weakness, because it's fairly well guaranteed that you'll see in IQ pattern scores, score patterns rather, that weaknesses in working memory and processing speed are common among children with attention deficit disorder. All right. So I showed you this. Is anybody who wasn't here last time? Oh my goodness, welcome.
Thank you.
There you go.
Angela about it, yeah. Yeah, spoke very highly of you, so.
I pay her.
Yeah.
My mother sends checks on a regular basis. So I'm going to make some references to what we talked about last week, a couple of weeks ago. So I'll fill in a little bit of that for you.
And I did look at your slides. There was some of your slides I looked at. So.
Okay, so you have some sense. But I'll do that for those of you who need it. So this representation of who is this child is a very, very important one. And today I was telling Jenny that I was at a memorial celebration for a colleague who recently passed away. And when I first met all of these folks 50 years ago, one of the things that I learned in one of the first interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary centers in the United States, the Children's Evaluation and Rehabilitation Center on the campus of the Albert Einstein College of Medicine, was to see a whole child. Why? Because I was the speech and language therapist, and Jenny was the reading teacher, and you were the psychologist, and you were the developmental pediatrician, and you were the OT, and you were the PT, and you were the reading teacher, and each of us would test that child, and then come back into the room and put the whole kid together again. So I learned a long time ago to look at a child and say, who is this child? Because no child is what his numbers are. So this representation of who is this child has the component of working memory in it. So you have an inherent neurology, and then temperament and personality. I'm the mother of twins. They are very different customers. Very different customers. Now, it is our very good fortune that they consider themselves, at least in some ways, two halves of a whole. They get along very well, but two more different personality types, two more different temperamental styles you wouldn't see. But then what I look for is, what is the extent of the overlap? What is this youngster's overall intellectual gift, his cognitive ability, and her ability to use what she's got? It's one thing to be smart, to have the potential, but can you use it? because maybe you have an attention deficit disorder, as we discussed a couple of weeks ago. If you have an attention deficit disorder, then you have disrupted executive functions. And disrupted executive functions will make you look a lot less able than you are because you're not efficient. All right. And then there's working memory, and you'll see that working memory is a part of the concept of attention and executive functions, and we're going to be talking mostly about that tonight. And who is this child emotionally? I'm working with a family right now where this little boy just plain felt stupid, and he's actually not at all. But he wasn't being taught in the way he could learn, and as a result, he felt dumb and didn't want to go to school. So when we were able to put him in a situation where they could teach him the way he knew how to learn, suddenly school was not a penitentiary. It wasn't a torture chamber. It was a cool place because he could learn. And then there is the issue of your language ability. And I'm working on a book that goes under multiple titles. You'll see in a moment. One of them is Classroom Language Dynamics. But the other one is Talking Isn't Teaching, and helping teachers know the potency of the language that they use and how they use it with the children. So another little fellow with whom I'm working, watch this. What is your name?
Christine.
Okay, Christine. So ask me, please, and I'll demonstrate what would be a typical response, and then what happens when a fellow has a disrupted language system, meaning he can't take it in and make sense of it fast enough. So ask me what I like most about school. I am, by the way, 12 years old. Therefore, I have to look like this.
Yeah. So what do you like most about school?
About what?
Yeah.
About school?
What do you like about school?
Fridays. What's the next logical question, Christine?
Oh,
What do you like
what's your favorite?
What do you like about
Is there? What do you like about Friday? What do you like about Friday?
We do stuff, and we play games. Now, you get that fellow on a topic on which he's comfortable and convenient, as in the New York Yankees. Right? He talks more and more effectively, but you can't give that kid a lecture on history at any rapid pace. You have to tell him what you're going to tell him. You have to tell him, and you have to tell him in a parsed way, meaning give him pauses between your phrasing so he can process what he's heard. And then you have to tell him what you told him so that he hears it multiple times. Because otherwise, what happens is his language system just doesn't take in information fast enough. Now, I'm from New York, and in New York we don't talk that way, but when I'm teaching, I can rest assured that I don't talk this way, that's for sure, because the children can't process what I'm saying. And one of the first things I teach teachers is you have to understand the rate at which these kiddos can process language, because otherwise what happens is they don't always behave well, because they don't know what the devil is going on. All of school is about language, completely regardless of the subject area. Because the phys ed teachers where I consult are trained how to give instructions. Because, okay, guys, let's all get together and we're going to grab that ball, we're going to... No, that doesn't work. Everybody look up at me. I'm going to give you an instruction. All right, I want you to grab the ball. I want you three to line up against the wall. Ball, wall, go. As opposed to, okay, guys, let's grab those balls and get up against the wall. That's not going to work if your language system is. Or, by the same token, I could say, sitting behind Jenny was a woman with extremely long hair, with a warm sweater, which is good because I'm rather cold. And I could see that she has a different temperature style than I do, because though she's wearing the sweater, she's also wearing shorts. So obviously, it doesn't bother her as much as it would bother me if I were wearing shorts. And in fact, the question you asked me was, who's sitting behind Jenny? The lady in the white sweater. So think of all the kinds of language processing that has to go on all the time. And then we come back to academics, which is how does that child need to be taught? And not Every kid gets a teacher who knows how to teach him the way he needs to learn, but many teachers do. And that's what we want to see, is teachers who recognize the needs of their individual learners. Okay? And then there's the sensory motor. I worked with a fellow many years ago, he's the father of multiple children now, and that kid could not sit still. He just couldn't sit still. He had the proverbial ants in his pants, and he was what was called hyper. So the teacher was great. She let him walk back and forth across the back of the room for entire periods, as long as his head was pointing towards the board issue or towards her. Because if he had to sit still, he couldn't hear. Now, and I know I gave this example to some of you the last time, you know the problem of the tag in the back of your shirt. Well, for some kids that could make absolutely nuts and steal all your attention. So when I'm looking at a child, I'm saying, who is this child? From a cognitive, attentional, working memory, emotional, linguistic, academic, and sensory motor function. How, what is his inherent neurology? Who is he? And how must I teach him? Or help his teachers know how to teach him? Tonight, we're going to be focusing on this working memory piece. And I told some of you the story about how this was evolved for a fellow who was misidentified as being intellectually limited and emotionally disturbed and having a severe attention deficit disorder and language impairment. And in fact, what he had was a wicked attention deficit disorder and was very language impaired and acted very badly because of it. His goal was to be seen as a bad boy instead of as a stupid boy. And as we analyzed all the parts of him, we saw it all come together. By the way, he's a college graduate now with had a very high GPA. All right? So I want you to keep this in mind because no one thing works for every kid. You can't do the same thing for every child. You can do a lot of the same things for many children. There you go. So this is the descriptor, the image of what I was describing. Who is this child? And then this is what I try and train teachers to do. To think about, what do I have to teach this child? How do I have to teach him? And why must I teach her this way? And that's both for the content, the subject area, all right, American history, Long Walk to Water, whatever it is that they're reading, The Giving Tree, and what skills am I going to teach them to do using this material? And how am I going to teach those skills? How am I going to teach you to make inferences? How am I going to teach you to identify what's relevant and irrelevant so that you can draw conclusions about what you're reading? It enhances your comprehension. And similarly, we teach the children the same thing so that they can be good self-advocates and know how they need to be taught and understand that it's okay to say, Mommy, repeat that, I was listening, but you talked really fast. Okay. You know I do better when you say it 2 times, just say it 2 times, Mom. Okay. So it's helping the child learn. So tonight, what we're going to do is take this piece and talk about it in this way. Working memory. All right, so what is your memory? You have memories. So what we want to do is define what this means. What is memory? It's our ability to use information from the past experiences in the present time. So our ability to have and to recall memories is a very important part of what makes us unique individuals. If you have siblings, I'm willing to bet that your memories and your siblings' memory of the same events are not identical. Am I correct? You're all nodding your heads, all right? So each of us has a distinct, very specific, very specific, and irreplaceable store of memories. They're yours. How you have them affects your feelings and your perceptions, all right, and your opinions. Okay, so I'll give you an example. Tonight, when I was late this afternoon, when I was on the Einstein campus, as I was driving, that we had gotten information that told us where we could park for free. because the parking there is impossible. And they had arranged parking for us. And I'm coming down Morris Park Avenue, and there's a parking spot. So I slow down and I look at the sign and think, I've got a parking spot. Now, it didn't matter that the parking spaces they were giving us were one closer. I got a parking spot. You never get a parking spot in this neighborhood. So I park the car and I walk up to the gate, and I stop and look at the sign, which I've already read twice. And I'm inclined to take a picture, but not to look like an idiot in the middle of the street. And I walk through the gate, towards the gate, and there's a man standing there, as they said there would be, who would let us in because he had our names on the list. And I said to him, you're the parking gate guy? He goes, yeah, but you just walked in, miss. And I said, I know, I got a parking spot. He said, really? And then it suddenly hit me. You ready? The last time I got a parking spot at Einstein, my car was stolen. And I stood there for a minute. He said, well, you got a spot. And all I'm thinking is, my car's going to get stolen. That's what's going on. I worked there for, I don't want to tell you how many years. I got one parking spot. But the impact of that memory of having my car stolen, unique to me, made me walk back to the parking spot that I got, start the car and bring it into the guarded lot. What was the likelihood my car was going to be stolen? Not great. But my memory and the emotional impact of it was potent. And that's my memory. If you had found the parking spot, wouldn't you have said yes and kept the parking spot? Right, because you can't park there. All right. So what I want to stress is that our memories facilitate, foster, all right, and affect our feelings, our perceptions, and our opinions. And in my opinion, it wasn't safe because the last time they stole it. It wasn't valid, but it was based on my memory. Right? So in general, memory is our ability to use information from the past in the present. Right? So what we have to do in that regard is there are these three crucial aspects of memory. The first one is encoding. Before anything can be remembered, before it can be remembered, right, it has to be perceived through one of our senses. All right? You know how many senses we have, but you have to have some perception of it and then be encoded, which means understood by the brain. So if, in fact, I give Christina a pinch on her arm, she's going to remember that sensation. But if I pinch and twist, she's going to encode pinching as a negative thing. So my grandfather used to pinch my grandmother, but it was a loving pinch. But when my brother would pinch me, it wasn't always a loving pinch. So understood by the brain and connected to a meaning. So encoded by our senses, right? And that's touch, smell, sight. All right? And then, once the information is taken in, so it's been encoded, before it can be remembered, you have to make sense of it. The brain has to take it in and understand it. Once it's encoded, it has to be stored. And if you don't have effective storage systems, it's hard to retrieve. It has to be stored in your brain, and that's why we teach children categories, because that's a much more efficient way of storing information. Now, you have long-term memory. Those are memories that last for a whole lifetime. You know, like the trip you and your family took to Yellowstone when you were a little one. All right, and then so those are long-term memories. I went back to the neighborhood in which I grew up, which is in the East New York section of Brooklyn. And you know what struck me more than anything else? I thought the streets had shrunk. But they actually had not. I had gotten bigger. You know what I mean. But in my mind's eye, the streets were very long. Right? So that I had this sensory perception, I encoded it, I stored it, and tucked it away in long-term memory. All right. Now, other information goes into your short-term memory. It's a good deal more limited than long-term memory. That would be like if I say to Jenny, I'm going to stop in Starbucks, what kind of coffee do you want? So I just have to hold on to that for a short period of time. I don't have to remember that 10 years from now, talking about Starbucks, that I bought coffee for Jenny. So it's short-term. And then you got to go find that memory when you want it. So memories are stored, and then they have to be retrieved or recovered. You have to go find them, dig them back up. And this is where it becomes important, whether you can easily find that memory, whether you can remember something readily, depends on how effectively you stored it. All right, so if you have this sort of randomized storage system as opposed to connections. So today I was seeing people that I hadn't seen in many years. And there was one woman whose name just would not come to me, no matter what I did. And I was struggling. So what I was doing was being a faker. And I would walk over to say hello to you while looking at her name tag, because for the life of me, I knew she was a pediatrician. I remembered her last night, but I wasn't going to call her hello, say hello, Dr. Smith. We were colleagues. So I was making my way over to you, whose name I don't remember, though you were here the last time, because it's a multisyllabic, uncommon name. Am I correct?
Demetra.
There you go. She knows her own name, but I knew it was multisyllabic and uncommon. That's as good as my memory was. While I was clandestinely trying to read Rosa's name tag. I know you're Christine, but she was Rosa, and I couldn't remember her name. So I had to retrieve information. And then there were moments where some of my colleagues I hadn't seen in a long time, and they didn't look the same. And it was taking me a moment, and hardly do you want to say, oh my God, what's your name? Oh my God, Nina, you look like hell, you aged badly. You can't say that to your former colleagues. Nina, how wonderful to see you. Oh my God, it's been years. And then, so there's a very big difference. All right. So I remembered, but I didn't recognize because their appearance had changed. All right. So part of what you need to be able to do is how effectively and efficiently did you store the information, all right? And what cues are you using to get the information? What are you triggering yourself with to get the information? The more organized your memories are, the easier they're going to be to retrieve. So that's an important thing to keep in mind. And now, before we get to working memory, so I want you to be alert. Memory is storage and retrieval. It's this process of encoding, storing, and retrieving. So you got a lot of different kinds of memory, folks. There's lots and lots and lots of different kinds of memory. So when you say your memory is going, you have to decide which one is going, because they're not all going at once. It doesn't happen. So let's talk about visual memory for a second, remembering that I thought my streak was long, but it was not. It was actually rather a short streak. My experience today, recognizing somebody that I had seen previously, but not in a very long time. From a school point of view, remembering the correct spelling of a word, that's visual memory too. So it becomes an issue. When I teach the kids to spell, I teach them to break the word into its syllables and make a picture in their mind. Make a picture. So that we give them in other words, they're not just looking, they are consciously stopping and saying, visual has 3 parts, take a picture. Okay. So that we help them retrieve because they've taken a picture. So then you have your auditory memory, recognizing something that you've heard before and being able to make sense of it. That's important because think of the number of verbal directions kids have to follow in school every day. lots and lots. So when I train teachers, I teach them to say to the kids, I'm going to tell you something to do. It's got 3 parts. Look at me. 1, 2, 3. Get ready to listen to 3 parts. So that they have a mindset for how much information they're getting, and I'm making it more multi-sensory for them. All right? So it involves sensation and short, yes.
What's the multisensory part?
Yeah.
Because you said to stop and look, is that the sensory?
So you have multiple senses. So let's say I'm teaching you to using an Norton-Gillingham approach for the letters.
Yeah.
That is a decidedly multi-sensory approach. So I show you, you see it. So it's the letter A. The name of the letter is A. The sound it makes is
Well,
A.
my question is, in the direction example, what's the multisensory part? Or was there, when you were saying, look at me, I'm going to give you 3 parts, were you saying that that's multisensory?
I'm going to give you 3 parts. I'm going to give you this. I'm going to get everybody look up at me, please. Eyeballs. Okay. I'm going to give you a direction. It has 3 parts. Now they've heard it.
Watch
All right.
your hand,
They've
yeah.
watched my hand. All right. And that it's sitting right there. So they see it and they hear it. And if I know that Demetra's memory is weaker than Christina's, I'll say, all right, everybody, remember, tap your fingers. 1, 2, 3, get ready to listen. First, I want you to, then I want you to, then I want you to. Now, Demetra will tell you that I didn't press hard, but I applied some pressure so she feels. That's all sensory.
Great.
All right? So when I'm teaching the children, sometimes I'll have them do it and just follow me. How many parts in my direction? 3. 1, 2, 3. And I make sure everybody's listening and looking. So right then and there, you've got the visual and the auditory. And if I know she needs it, I give her. Or I say to them, put your fingers on the table, look down. 1, 2, 3. It takes no time. It takes no time. Yes, ma'am.
And you just remind me of an example that I had to use, but my son has to use first, then, next. If I give him 3 things, we're trying to get out of the house. Not happening. It's like, I was told by somebody I was working with, say first, then next, because he will, I have to do everything now. Like that's especially with ADHD kids, they think everything is happening all at once and you're asking them to do everything.
That's part of the executive function disruption.
Definitely has that.
All right, so that's when you do, I'm telling you 3 things. First, next, last. All right, or first, second, third. Not 4th and 5th, sweetheart, just first, second, and third. It's a 3-finger activity. All right, and that helps because then you send the kid off with the fingers.
Right.
All right, and by the way, what's your son's name?
Daniel.
Daniel, leave the thumb and pinky out of this. Because you know why? You know why? Because in that circle of who is this child emotionally, he's going to think you're weird, it's going to make him laugh. And that feels good. Oh, you're so weird. Yeah, I know. But it works. But it works, yes.
Is there an age that becomes inappropriate or it shouldn't be needed anymore? Because it sounds like a great idea, but I don't know if at some point it would either be inappropriate to ask a teacher to do that or if I would look silly doing it.
So it depends on who your child is. All right? It depends on who your child is. Those kinds of things, depending on personality, you can get away with and you modify them through early teen years. All right, Christine, sweetheart, I need you to do 3 things. All right, just 3. As opposed to when Christina was 5, and I said to her, honey, you got to do 1, 2, 3 things. 1, 2, 3. No thumb, no pinky. I wouldn't talk to a 13-year-old that way. But I might, by force of nature, say, Christine, sweetie, 3 things. All right, first, could you bring the laundry up? Second, drop it off in the master bedroom. And third, bring the bag back downstairs. So it's presentation and it's adaptation to the way.
Well, also, when you tell them, I'm going to tell you 3 things, like you're ready to get those 3 things. It's not like a long list of
creates
5 things.
preparatory
It's like, oh my
set.
God, I just missed all that structure. I get that. That's really.
It creates a preparatory set. So, you know what, when I'm dealing with high school kids, and I'll be honest in saying that's not my favorite population because they're carrying, for me, there's a lot going on. And I just accept that for teenagers, I'm just going to be seen as weird and I accept it. It's all there is to it. And I will say to them, I know you think I'm odd, but the simple truth is when I hold up 3 fingers, it helps you remember. Get over it. Gee, Dr. Seufer, you don't have to be so snarky. Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm going to tell you 3 things. 1, 2, 3. You know, so I like to do a little to them what they, now, that's never mean. And I remember one of the teachers with whom I worked, because I'm not really sarcastic, I'm teasy. One of the teachers was told by a kid that she was mean. And she's a superb teacher. I worked with her for a while. She was really upset. So I said, Laura, you're not mean, you're direct, you're clear. You don't need them to like you. You need them to learn from you, like some of the younger teachers want the kids to like them. And so she walks into the next class and she says to this group of kids, you know, some of your classmates just told me I was mean. And I thought, oh, what did you just do? And she said, and do you think I'm mean? Now she's standing there looking at them, and this one kid looks up. So funny. He looks up and he goes, well, you are mean, but you're a really good teacher. You know, that was like, I'm not pandering to you. Do what you have to do. I'm not here to make you like me. I'm here to help you learn. All right. So it was so genuine. He just looked at her and said, yeah, but you're a good teacher, like we learned from you. You could be a little warmer and more pleasant, but hey, the poor woman exhaled. It's her style. I like to tease them, not mock. Not mock. In the same way I say to you before I touch you, I'll say to the kids, all right, I'm going to use you as an example, okay? Everybody keep your eyes on Christine's shoulder as I give whatever the devil the demonstration is. All right. And if a kid looks at me and goes, okay. And then I always say to them, I'm doing this because. And when I've given a direction, and I've repeated it, and I've used a visual, I will then say to them, I want you to think for a minute, what did I just do that helped you? So that they're aware that there's something deliberately being done, okay? Well, when you hold the 3 fingers up, it helps me remember I got to do 3 things, which, by the way, are too many to want to do. Yes, I didn't ask you whether you like to do all 3 things, 15-year-old. I just asked you how, if it helped you. And how does that help you? Yeah, well, it's sort of like I remember better. So they know and have, that's the part called metacognition, being aware of your own thinking. So you have all different kinds of memory, as you can see. Episodic memory is like, what did you eat for dinner tonight? Because you've already eaten it. It was a while ago. What happened in the beginning of the chapter, and how is it influencing what's happening now in the chapter? So, you know, what you're looking for is events learned or experience had in the recent past. Recent past. Not long-term memory. Not short-term memory, let me give it right back to you, but episodic memory, a period of time ago. So that, just look at all this procedural memory. I always love to ask people, how do you make a peanut butter sandwich? And oh my gosh, you take for granted common knowledge. Well, you get the bread, and you get the peanut butter, and you get the jelly. Where do you get it from? From the cupboard. Well, how do you get it out of the cupboard? Well, you open the cupboard. How do you open the cupboard? You don't realize how much you do, which brings us to the whole idea of automatic memory. All of that's automatic. All right? You know how to brush your teeth. You don't have to think about it. All right? You know what to do. How many of you have to stop to think about how to spell your name? It's automatic by now. So there's all different kinds of memory. There's motor memory, there's procedural memory, knowing how to do all of the things you do. Yes?
Are these, down these columns, are the words on the right kind of summarizing the first few? Like it's, okay.
No. I'm showing you the list of all different kinds of memory that there are, so you are aware that memory is not one thing. Okay. These are the ones that have greater potency for us as learners. You are using your working memory now if you're taking notes. All right? Some of you are nodding, and that's, to me, that's a short-term memory. Right? Oh, I remember when that happened. I'm pulling that out from behind. Tonight we're going to be talking about working memory. So you also have autobiographical memory. Let me guess. Nina, are you married?
Yes,
When is your anniversary?
July 16th.
So we'll celebrate. Okay. And do you have brothers and sisters?
Yes,
What are their birthdays?
I can't remember.
Uh-oh, SpaghettiOs. How many siblings do you have?
I have two siblings, so December 3 is my sister, and my brother is always, it's June 17 or something.
I know how to break it to you, but your brother's birthday is this week.
It's all the way in Finland.
Oh, so he's in Finland, so we get around it. All right. But you see, autobiographical memory is information about your own life. All right, so it makes a big difference. Your semantic memory is your knowledge of words. All right. So think about your informational memory. For instance, what is the capital of France? It's Paris. All right. Who's the first president of the United States? Right. Now, she said GW. Who's the first president of the United States?
George Washington.
Hmm?
I said, good job.
Good job. Okay. No. Good job.
Oh, don't say that. Thank you for pointing that out.
All right. You know what? Good job remembering. Be specific. Because good job doesn't reinforce. Whoa, good job making a list in order. That reinforces the behavior. Good job. All right.
Should a person never say good job ever?
You know what? If you do what I say, what I suggest, half the time, you're ahead of the game.
Great.
All right. I don't live in your house, so it's not going to be that I'm saying, don't say good job again.
I just
All
like
right.
clear guidelines.
Right. But my point is, when you say good job, be specific. Wow, that's terrific when you fold the clothing. You know, when it gets easier to put it in the good job folding too. So being specific, rather. And again, so these different kinds of memory we use more often. Tonight we're going to be talking about working memory, and all of this is in relationship to school. All right. So I showed you, for those of you who were not here with us last time,
Just a quick question. Which was the memory type that allows you to remember George Washington?
that's informational memory. The background knowledge that you have, that's general information. If I ask you what your wedding anniversary is, that is autobiographical information. If I ask you how to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, that's procedural memory. If you write your name, it's automatic memory. But if I have to spell Demetra, it's not automatic for me. She doesn't have to think about it. I have to stop. Because in English, D and M don't go together at the, am I correct? Is it DM?
D-E-M.
Oh, D-E-M. Okay. So, and now it's interesting, because I pulled up what I know about that name, which is Dmitri. And the name Dmitri is D-M-I-T-R-I. It's a Russian name, I believe. But Dmitri's name is D-E-M-E-T-R-A.
E-T-R-A.
Right. Okay. I wouldn't have known that. I would have spelled it D-M. But she doesn't have to think twice about it. She's been spelling it forever. And this is where I love the way English is spelled. Just as this is an aside. Dr. Sarper is making a left turn. Okay. You ready for my favorite?
L-Y?
Oh,
Oh, yes.
this one's my favorite. That kid's mother is a special ed teacher. Because that's how it sounds. That's how it sounds. Lindsay, there you go. So what I want, for those of you who did not hear the talk on executive functions, what I wanted you to see, and just to remind everybody else, that executive functions and self-regulation, these executive functions help us be effective in our everyday life. And if in fact you have an attention deficit disorder, your executive functions are going to be disrupted. These are the kids who call out. All right? These are the kids who touch what they're not supposed to touch or grab what they're not supposed to grab. These are the children who have to really stop and think about what I want to say and how I want to say it. Pay attention to the person who's talking, not to your friends who are yakking over there. Or classrooms where there's a lot of visual noise, where lots of things are hanging. How do you selectively attend? And how do you set goals for getting my homework done, for getting my notes in order? I think I told you about my Lego mania. And how do I organize all of my Lego pieces to build, all right? So I set a goal, I'm only gonna work an hour, and what is my plan for how I'm gonna get my pieces together and organize them in sequence. And you know what? Sometimes I have to keep on keeping on, and sometimes I have to make a left turn to be able to shift set. How do I keep on doing what I'm doing and then knowing how to shift? So when I have kids with attentional problems and they have to make multiple transitions during the day, it's extremely difficult for them because it's hard for them to stop and make a left turn. So we use announcements, we use a time timer so they can see the time moving. We give them multiple alerts. So I might say, what is your name? Naomi, I might say, Naomi, I'm going to come by in 3 minutes, 1, 2, 3, to tell you that we're going to get ready to go, all right? So when you see me coming, get ready for 3 minutes. Naomi, okay, get ready, because when I erase the board, we're going to leave. Watch for me to erase the board, because then we're going to leave. Did you hear me repeat myself? And reframe that. Because I know it's hard for her to shift sets. So I've given her multiple preparatories. And that doesn't mean she's not going to have a hissy fit anyway, but it is conceivable that she won't have a hissy fit because she's been set up. And or to say, I know you don't want to stop playing. I know. And we're going to play tomorrow. And let's not be too upset about it. Just this upset, okay? So I give them a way to be upset. And if you're a teenager, I say, you know what, if you're going to get ticked off, go in your room and scream for a minute and then come down, let's get going. All right? So you have to know who your customer is. Today we're going to be talking mostly about the aspect of working, the executive functions called working memory. This part, self-regulation, remember I told somebody last night, I'm watching that clock like that. So I'm monitoring myself. How am I doing? Better than usual, all right? That's the evaluation part. So I have to stop and monitor. I don't have to talk any faster or more slowly. I know what I'm doing. Like, I was here very early tonight. Jenny and I crossed paths and had a good chuckle about it. And then, because I wanted to have dinner before I came up from the city. So I then went to Whole Foods, bought myself something to eat, and then kept the car on so I could see the clock and monitor how I was doing. That's self-monitoring. Then I stopped watching the clock because I was going over my nose and suddenly looked up and said, oh nuts, you're going to be late. Because I wasn't watching all the time. Ergo, I threw everything in a garbage bag and put lipstick on and drove here. That's behavioral adjustment. Okay. So, all right, now, here we go. What is working memory? Well, as it says, it's part of the information processing system. And it helps us make sense of what we can hear, what we see, what we experience. It is a special kind of memory. You see how many there are. It's a special kind of memory, and there is no specific part of the brain that we know of yet that is responsible for working memory. It's not quite the same as short-term memory. People confuse it. They are related. So this is important to understand. the part of your memory system that allows you to hold on to some information while doing something with it. So if I give you a short-term memory task, all right, which would be, Naomi, would you repeat these numbers for me, please? And I'm going to be very helpful. I'm going to ask you to say 3 numbers. 4, 8, 9.
4, 8, 9.
In her ear, out her mouth. She doesn't have to do anything with them. But in working memory, you have to hold on to that and use it in some way. And that makes a big difference. Right? So it allows your brain to hold on to some information for a short period of time so you can do something with that information, not just recite it back. That's in her ear, out her mouth. All right, I'm going to give you examples, plenty of examples of what that means. Now, it means, in part, that holding that information is temporary, and working memory has this quick decay. It disappears. You can't hold on to it as readily. So, a simple definition of working memory is this. It is the capacity. How big is the bowl called working memory? It is the capacity to hold, and here comes the key word, and manipulate information in your mind over short periods of time. To hold and manipulate information in your mind over short periods of time. And whether your working memory capacity is this big or this big makes a difference in how easy it is for you to learn. Any of you who are taking notes are dependent upon your working memory. Because I'm talking faster than you can write. All right? Which means you have to hold in your head what I'm saying, convert it into notes. And you have an advantage. You already know how to write the words that you know how to spell. That's a big difference. That's some of this. Yes, Annie?
So in the example you just gave, where I repeated 4, 8, 9, was that me using my working memory?
No, that was you using your short-term memory.
Okay.
Okay. Now, you want to use your working memory? Okay.
Sure.
Okay. Now, what I'm going to ask, you volunteered, I didn't on you.
Not on purpose.
Okay, you don't have to.
No, it's okay, it's okay.
I want everybody, and you being a sport, would you be kind enough to turn the camera on this lady, please? Not on me. Turn it towards her. Thank you. I want everybody to watch. All right. So I'll stand behind the camera. I'm going to try not to block your view. All right. What I'm going to ask you to do, if you would be so kind, is to repeat these numbers for me. And I'm going to do this part twice, with support and without support. Naomi, I'd like you to repeat 5 numbers to me. 6, 1, 2, 8, 7.
6, 1, 2, 8, 7.
Okay? Now, I'm going to do it without the visual support and without the deliberate pacing. Naomi, I'd like you to repeat some numbers for me. Are you ready?
Yes.
Okay. 9, 4, 8, 6, 1.
9, 4, 8, 6, 1.
All right? So her short-term memory is fine. It went in her ear and out her mouth. She didn't need me pacing. She didn't need my fingers. All right? She's intact. Now, I'm going to give you a working memory task.
Okay,
Okay? And tell me when you're ready.
I'm ready.
Okay. I'd like you to repeat these numbers for me in reverse order. Okay? 4, 7, 6, 1, 3, 9, 5.
5, 9, 3, 1, 7, 4. I got that wrong.
Okay.
That was hard.
Yes, it was. I'm going to turn this back. Hi, it's me again. All right, thank you very much. The reason I wanted you to watch is everybody does the same thing. When I gave her the short-term memory test, she looked right at me and repeated the numbers, whether I gave her the prompts or not. But the minute you say, in reverse order, everybody does the exact same thing.
You're trying to see it.
They immediately look up and write them across your forehead so that then you can attempt to read them back. Now, Naomi used a fairly good technique. She knew it was coming. So, but all things considered, you go, girl, all right? Did you hear the first 3 numbers repeated? In a chunk. In a chunk. I gave her, I don't remember if it was 8 or 9 numbers, but she chunked the first 3. What she basically did was got the first 3 and the last 3. You'll almost invariably lose the middle. But everybody looks up and starts repeating them and trying to read them. That, by the way, was an impossible task. Yes?
Thank you.
All the way in the back.
So you,
I'm sorry, all the way in the back first.
So of all the memory that we're talking about, is working memory the one which can be built over the time, it goes down the time with the age? Which
All memory goes down with age. This isn't funny. No, your memory varies over age, and you watch people who are developing dementia or Alzheimer's lose different aspects of memory, so you don't recognize your spouse. You look at a pair of scissors and you don't know what to do with them. You know, people who have automatic memory can brush their teeth for a long time and then lose that kind of automatic memory. They'll have to be fed. Now, working memory is a particularly fragile system because you have to do something with it. And if you can't hold on to it, you can't do anything with it.
Yeah, I think where I was going with that is like with the kids really, if you work on that every day, like it's almost like practicing things.
I'm going to give you some techniques as we go on for what you can do to help kids with working memory and to help yourself. And one of the first and most important ones is chunking. You know why? Because if I had said to Naomi, I'm going to give you 9 numbers, chunk them into 3 parts and repeat them to me backwards, then she actually only has to remember 3 chunks instead of 9 individual numbers. All right? So, you know, if I'm going to teach the kids before Google, all right, and you had to learn the 50 states, we put them in alphabetical order and knew that there were so many A's, so many, I don't think there are any B's, all right, so many C's, that kind of thing, because that reduces the load on working. You had a question as well.
I was just curious as to whether, because I can hold like phone numbers of people from, you know, phone numbers and birth dates, like numbers, are easier for me to remember. So do you see a distinction for children with ADHD that are they more apt to be able to remember numbers than words, and can you use the numbers as a prompt to help them?
Okay, remember that image, who is this child? A person with ADHD is a person beyond his or her ADHD. So without knowing the other parts of the kiddo, I can't really answer that question for you. What I do know is that there are memory techniques. Teachers, all math teachers teach children PEMDAS. Does PEMDAS ring a bell for anybody? Parentheses, exponent, multiply, divide, add, subtract. Those are the math functions. Anybody here a language and speech pathologist? We had to learn the 12 cranial nerves. On old Olympus towering tops, a Finn in German viewed some hops. Those were the 12 cranial nerves on old Olympus, olfactory, ocular, motor, I mean, Finn, facial, Finn and auditory and German. I can't remember all of them now, but those kinds of memory techniques really do help.
What techniques, the PEMDAS?
The PEMDAS it's a mnemonic device. It's, then again, mnemonic, M-N-E-M-O-N-I-C, a memory device. So am I correct? PEMDAS, right? So that's the way the kids are taught to remember the mathematical functions. What do you do when you're dealing with a math problem? So what happens in working memory is you have to do something with it. You don't just have to spit it back. So she had to hold on to it, remember it in reverse, and repeat it that way. Now, telephone numbers, all right, the work of a man named George Miller said that we have a memory capacity that is 7 plus or minus 2, which means from a range of 5 to 7 items of information. All right. Now, if you convert that to chunks, You can remember a lot if you chunk it. So what's your phone number? 917-496-6714, 334. It's much easier to do that. And as you get older, remembering that is harder. So what I do is blow off the area code, all right? Because if I hear 646, I don't have to think about it again. That's this part of the city. If I hear 917, damn. If I hear 203, oh, it's Connecticut. I don't have to worry about it. And then you do the chunks. And when I give my phone number, did you hear what I did? 917, pause, 496, pause, 6714, not 6714. So by chunking information, you reduce the load, because in each chunk you can have several pieces. So, and that chunking is an important strategy, and one of the things that you see when kids are having trouble with working memory is they simply lose information. You'll see it. Yes, sir?
On the working memory, is it, I know it's a process to hold and manipulate, is it only in the short term? So even if you're calling up a memory, then using that information, that's still calling it into working memory?
I'm going to give you a perfectly good example. A teacher is talking to the children about the Louisiana Purchase. And she says to the class, all right, everybody, I want you to think about the number of people that were involved in the Louisiana Purchase and where they came from originally. What's your name?
Ryan?
I'm sorry?
Ryan?
Ryan. And Ryan raises his hand. And I call on him. And then he says, never mind. Why? Because in the process of looking for the answer to how many people and from what organizations, what groups were involved in the Louisiana Purchase, he forgot what the question was. So when a teacher asks a question, your working memory says, grab it, hold it, stay here question, while I go looking for the answer and formulating it. But sometimes what happens, you go looking and you forget the bloody question. That's a working memory lapse.
And then if you're looking to bring something up like back in time, is that also working memory stuff? So let's say we went back and said, okay, hey, remember that number I just gave you? The one that 859 or whatever was in the beginning.
What was the number, Naomi?
Which time?
The first one, the first.
829?
No, it was 487.
So then if we said do that backwards, would she have to pull that up from her?
No, then she'd have to pull that up. If I asked her now, what is the number that I gave you originally, which was 4879, I think. But you won't remember, we can look at the recording. That then would have shifted out of working memory. Working memory decays very
I mean, as soon as if let's say that she was able to call it up,
Mhm.
and then she reversed it, is that using working memory, or is that using
No,
some-
that was already long-term memory. Then she's doing a separate
even if you're
process.
manipulating it from,
Yes.
like I have to reverse
If she had to pull it back up from 20 minutes ago and then reverse it, that's no longer working memory. Working memory is quick. It's short, it's fast.
And is it
decays
also
quickly.
sound-based, like, and the short-term memory is sort of sound? So like if you make it, like sound the numbers of the phone, they're easy to remember than if you're just,
So
Say
if
them in
you
a
mean,
monotone.
I'm not sure I understand your question, right?
like I had learned that short-term memory has a lot to do with sound, so it's very linked to sound of things. So if you were to say, my number is 1, 2, like even when you did your
Oh, the
chunking,
inflection?
6, 7,
Oh, to change
1,
the
4.
inflection. Oh, that one for me, that would confuse the heck out of me if there were intonation patterns. What I did was chunk, 917, but if you did 917, 496, 6784, I would lose it. So I don't know, and that's sort of harder to do. Now, I sometimes will teach the children a rhythm, 917, 496, 6714. So they have chunks to remember. I don't know that about rhythm patterns. I can't answer.
Well, even that, like I guess maybe it's linked, but the way the rhythm of it was like sound,
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to like if you said that, I don't think of a picture, bring up. the
Sometimes
sound
I
of
tell
what
the
you
kids
said.
to make a picture in their heads while they're doing it, to picture what they're hearing. And the other thing that you need to know about working memory is, you know what's facilitating? Repetition, repetition, repetition.
So working memory can have different types of, on the memory of the preceding page, can it, I guess I'm trying to get at, like, what cues or whatever, what types of memories do you trigger that make something more likely to be effectively stored in working memory? And is it just like the multiple inputs that help?
Oh, okay, now I understand your question. Okay, so if I'm standing here with Christine and I say, again, I'm going to play with your shoulder, okay? What I want you to think about in terms of what we're learning are two important things. Who were the people involved in the Louisiana Purchase, and what was the biggest problem in the Louisiana Purchase? People, problem. And then it's going to be easier for her to hold on to that information, because I've cued her and she'll tell you that I pressed. All right? So if I know that this little girl has trouble in that regard, I repeated, and I reduced the demand into people, problem, and gave her a sensory.
So like the other memory types that are there.
Right, because that then reduces the demand on working memory because I put less information in. She doesn't have to figure out what the two most important parts are. I've already told her. I've already told her. I've done it in a multi-sensory way. Okay. So part of what happens is if you can't hold on to the information, then you can't answer the question. If you can't hold on to the information from the first part of the paragraph to the next part of the paragraph, and last part, it's going to affect your comprehension. I've seen kids who have real trouble with long sentences with embedded clauses because the sentences are too long and there's too much information for them to remember. I've watched children have trouble with this. This is for littler kids, when you have to decode a multisyllabic word. Okay, so the child's been taught syllable structure. He gets this word, he goes, whoa, I don't know how to say that word. So, but I do know how to syllabicate it because he's been taught that. And then he goes, re, pre, sen, ta, tiv. And the teacher says, okay, now put it all together. The problem is that he can't remember the beginning of those 5 syllables. All right. So then you have to start to repri, senta, tiv. Now he only has to remember 3 chunks instead of 5. This is murdering multi-step math problems. It becomes a real challenge. So working memory is holding in your head while you're doing something with it. And that's a really good example of if you can't, if it's too much for you to hold in your head, you've got 5 syllables there, now put it all together. You've got to hold on to all of them in order to be able to put them together. So basically, working memory is a mental workspace. You're holding on to something in order to do something with it. Again, it is the ability, the capacity to hold on to information and manipulate it over short periods of time, because then it's gone. Alrighty. Now, working memory is also, as you saw, part of the executive function system. Alrighty. And again, hold and manipulate. Do I have the right slide? I don't. Forgive me. Went too fast.
I think that's right.
Is it?
Yeah, I think that's right.
It should be 8, right?
I think on slide, what, 5, but I didn't count the.
Oh, here it is. I'm sorry. I had my notes on top of the slide. Okay. So again, it's an executive function. And what it is hold it in your head so you don't lose track of what you're doing. This is the key word. Briefly, connect what has just been given to you that you're holding in working memory to other information. Hold a question in your head while you're searching for the answer. That's the easiest way. Hold the first syllables in your head while you're getting to the end. so that you can decode the words. And remember, if you don't have enough working memory, you're not going to have room to hold on to a whole heck of a lot of information. And that makes a big difference when you have a small capacity. It is the capacity to hold on to and manipulate information. Nina is writing notes. She's using her working memory because I'm talking too fast for her to write it all down. All right? This is, it holds information briefly so you can connect it to other information. Now, working memory, there it is. Hold and manipulate. Temporary storage. A mental workspace. And it doesn't make a difference how rich or poor or smart you are. It's what is your working memory capacity. Now, let me give you this example. You ready? How many times have you asked for directions? You're lost. All right, I asked Jenny tonight. I'm not from this neck of the woods. I needed food. She said twice, by the way, go out and make a right, and when you get to the light, make another right. That's Putnam Avenue. And about 4 or 5 lights down, there's a Starbucks and a Whole Foods. And you know what I got out of that? Make a right and make another right. And then something good's going to be there. Because it was just TMI. Too much information. So, when you pass the church on the left, turn immediately right and then take the second left. How many of you remember that when they say it to you? Or what do? You repeat it to yourself multiple times. That, you have to hold that information. Anybody here speak Greek? You do. Of course, Demetra. Who's a dummy? All right? Because my accent is going to make you want to hurt me. So I'm going to let you say it instead. All right? All right? I'm going to ask Demetra to say this word in Greek. Okay? You okay with this?
Yeah.
You're fluent in Greek? Yes. And the reason I'm doing that is
15 minutes.
oh, sure. Okay? We have only a little bit of time, and I don't want to butcher this, all right? So, and make her upset. Would you say this word? Everybody listen and get ready to repeat it. All right? Say that word in Greek, please.
Αυτοκίνητο.
Oh, good God. All right? That's not what she said.
Αυτοκίνητο.
Okay. Now, if you think that was bad, wait for this one.
Oh, let me think.
Here it
That's
is.
a
Here
hard
it is. Here it is.
Εντυπωσιακό.
You hear you know why it's harder for you to hold on to that? Because it's unfamiliar. Give it to him one more time.
Εντυπωσιακό.
I can't even get the information pattern. I can't even get the information. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So depending upon the demand, it is harder. How many of you have been in the supermarket and you're totaling how much you bought until you get to the third aisle and you don't remember anymore what those numbers are? Because you only have a 20 in your pocket. All right? So I want you to keep in mind keywords, seconds, temporary storage, mental workspace. Doesn't make a difference how much you know, it's your capacity. You're all smart enough, not one of us could repeat that Greek word. All right? Why? Because it's unfamiliar and you only heard it once and you don't have the capacity to hear that. And it's different than short-term memory. All right? So working memory and paying attention, needless to say, have a close relationship. And it is important that we are able to sustain our attention for long periods of time. How long do I have to focus? All right? So the longer I have to focus, the more information I'm going to be getting in and have to manipulate. Which is why I implore teachers to break tasks into chunks. Because 43 minutes is like being in the dentist chair for some of the kids. And pay no attention. How many of you have seen The Wizard of Oz? Please note, here is Toto.
I don't think I was wondering what that was, yeah.
Don't ask. In addition to the Legos, I collect Wizard of Oz memorabilia. I met the Munchkins. All right. So You remember? Pay no attention to that man behind the curtain when the Wizard of Oz is suddenly exposed for the charlatan he is. Well, pay no attention to those cool sneakers, to those darn nice sandals. Just focus. All right? Because the more you are pulled left, right, and sideways and pay attention to the things that are not relevant, the greater the drain on your capacity for attendance. All right? And this ability to shift attention, for those of you with ADHD kids, this is what I teach teachers to do. All right, the bell just rang. I didn't dismiss you. The bell doesn't dismiss you. I do. All right, get your books ready. Into the back. Shh, shh, shh. I'm talking. Pack up your backpacks and turn off your math brain. You got 2 minutes in the next class, and then turn on your science brain. So, and then when they get to science, I ask the teachers to say that, okay, everybody, turn on your science brain. So that they help the children shift sets. Because it's not always easy for them. Are you ready for a working memory task? Give them the papers.
Probably not, but I should. Does everybody have one?
Anyone need a pencil?
Need a pencil?
I do.
All right,
Maybe.
Erin, you can do it.
get ready. Everybody ready?
We're still working on pencils.
I'm so sorry. I'll take a drink.
Too helpful.
Okay, a whole bunch.
Okay. Eyeballs. Unbelievable, you all know. Eyeballs, see, I've conditioned. Get ready to listen, everyone. I'm going to give you the easy ones first. Touch the big square. Point to the smallest X. No biggie, right? It's very little demand. Here comes the next one. Are you ready? Look up at me and show me that you're ready. Okay. Listen. Put your thumb in the big circle, then use your pencil to touch the other one. Okay. Look up at me. Eyeballs. See how that works? Because when I use that voice, eyeballs, she stopped what you're, I'm sorry, I don't remember. your
Claire.
name. Claire, look, stop, okay? Get ready. Draw a small circle, make a circle in the big square, and then make a square in the middle one. Getting a little harder, aren't they? But none of these require working memory. This is all short-term. I was increasing the amount you had to hold on to and do, with which you had to do something. Now get ready. This is working memory. Listen carefully. Before you make 4 X's above the middle circle, draw a line connecting 2 circles. See the difference? You have to hold in your head before you make 4 X's above the little square. Draw a line connecting 2 circles. And I'm not even checking your work. But you realize that's what working memory is. Let me give you another one. Put 3 dots above the thick line after you've made a square and a circle underneath it. So you've got to hold on to information about what I said first while you're doing what I said second, which has to be done first. Is that making sense? That's working memory.
Can you say it again? Oh, sorry. Can you say it again so I got it right?
I don't think you did. I was watching you.
I mess up every
Are
task
you
so
ready?
far.
Before you make 4 X's above the middle skirt,
Mess it up.
okay, or the other one was put 3 dots above the thick line after you've made a square and a circle underneath it. So you have to hold in your head, put 3 dots above the thick line, but first I've got to make a square and a circle underneath it. That's working memory, when teachers give multi-step directions. How's that for you? Does that make it clearer to you what a working memory task is? All right, now, working memory, you ready? Get ready. So in order for you to multiply 67 times 43, you have to hold the 2 numbers in your head. You have to pull up the multiplication rules from long-term memory, because we don't walk around with this information in our head, so you have to retrieve it. This is long-term memory. You learned it in the 4th grade. All right? And then you've got to hold on to the partial solutions, all right? So 3 times 7 is 21. 1, carry the 2. 3 times 6. And don't forget to add that 2 to it, by the way, all right? You've got to store those partial solutions while you're doing the next set of calculations, all right? And then, this is why God made calculators, all right? So, but you see, you can do it. You can do it. It's not that hard, but you have to make a real effort to do so. Now, watch this. Are there limits to working memory? You betcha. The small capacity, the great capacity. Now to 264 times 369. It's a devil of a lot harder. You have to be holding on to small bits of information while you do, and I bet that unless some of you are accountants or real strong mathematicians, you can't do this. And you know all the multiplication. What's 9 times 4? 6. What's the, okay, 6. It's very hard to do. This also.
What's the answer?
Oh, God, only knows.
672.
Somebody's got a phone.
What is it?
It is 670.
So here's what you have to know, is the amount that can be held in your head is limited, and the limit is influenced by the complexity of what has to be remembered. All right? And part of the reason I asked Demetra to say the words in Greek was meaningfulness. You don't speak Greek. It's harder to hold on to something to which you have no connection. I'll give you $10 if you can say either of the words that Demetra said. You think I'm that stupid? I wouldn't offer the money if I thought you could do it. Seriously, all right? And this, if there's background noise, that's why I'm bothered when kids talk in little groups, because sometimes background noise is very hard for them. So the number of units, how meaningful is it, and how much can you concentrate? Like I can't be in Bloomingdale's at Christmas time. It's just too overwhelming for me. All right? The background noise gets me. I can't think of reading train stations or airports. It's too noisy. It overwhelms me. And will also influence your working memory because it's constant information, less and less and less and less. All right? Repetition, repetition, repetition. Rehearsal boosts recall. You hear me repeatedly repeating myself. Yes?
This has to go with a classroom setting. So you've talked about a few different things that, to me, talk about environment. A front room in the classroom that's clear and doesn't have a lot of stuff. And so I'm just wondering, are there other things that you think are ideal conditions for a learning environment?
It depends on the learner.
A traditional school.
You know, it really depends on the learner. That stuff doesn't bother me, so I know how to ignore it, but I don't have an attentional problem. I happen to have a pretty decent memory, what's left of it.
But you're designing for a general ed.
I'm designing for a general ed class that has children of all different needs integrated. My version of life is keep all of their work on the walls in the back, keep essential information in simple, not sexy, colorful looking charts up there, so I can say to them, look up, those are music coordinating conjunction from that chart. So, and their work is in the back of them, because I don't want visual noise for them. And then I teach them where to look for information. But their materials, their work hangs where it's behind them, but it's on display. And then I keep very basic information in front of them to which they need to refer on any given day. And when we're doing literacy activities, we pick out the vocabulary words, and it might say, chapter 7. And then I have the word, and it's syllabicated. All right, we're going to hear this word, we talk about what it means first. All right, so that the words are taught in advance, and they are there as a reference. And I can say, tell me the kind of job that Andrew had, use the vocabulary word temporary. It's there. So I'm trying to, and you know what, for those kids who don't need those supports, no biggie, doesn't hurt it. For those kids who do need the supports, it's a blessing. But I don't want stark environments. I want quiet environments so that their work is up there and key references to help them as reminders are up there. I have 2 minutes, so let me just keep going for another minute or two, because I want to make another couple of points. Working memory is everywhere. Just look at that laundry list. Working memory is everywhere. How many times have you been introduced to somebody only to forget their name at a cocktail party before you started drinking? So what I do is I get the person's name, and while we're chatting, I'm standing and going, is it Christina? Christina? Christine?
Me, Christine,
Okay, so I'll be standing there, and she can't see this because she's important, and I might be able to get a grant from her. So I'm doing this while we're chatting.
What are you doing behind your back?
I'm poking myself, Christine, Christine. So I remember, and I'm repeating the name. Because how many times you've been introduced to somebody only to go, what the heck is her name? 30 seconds later, all the time. So in my head, I'm repeating while I'm engaging. And God forbid it's an unfamiliar name with multiple syllables, you're completely out of luck. So just look, right?
Now, is like the name, is that short term or working?
These are all working memory. I have to hold on to that person's name while I'm talking to so I can use it. And the other thing that I do, Ryan, is repeat it. So did I have to address you by your name, Ryan? Not at all. But what I'm helping myself do is remember that of the 2 gentlemen in the room, one of them is named Ryan and the other hasn't asked me a single question. So it's easy because I only have to address you, Ryan. Repetition, repetition, repetition. So I've got Naomi and Claire and Ryan and Christina and Demetra and Nina and Jenny and Stacy. And the rest of you are anonymous. Because I haven't got their names.
You're poking yourself? Are you pretending to listen to their conversation?
I am listening to them, but what I've done for myself is I'm working on my posture. So I tend now to stand this way instead of this way, all right, because I don't want to end up like that. So I've been working on my posture. But even when I wasn't, I might be standing and listening to you and saying, oh, that's so interesting. Wait a minute, you were in Delaware? But I've given myself, Delaware, really? I haven't been there in years until I've got it. Or I might be saying, blue eyes, freckles. Yes, ma'am.
As we are, it's a little different question, but since you mentioned about all these names and remembering very well, as we're getting more and more diverse in the schools with different population from different countries and immigrants, I feel it's great for kids and even us to jog our memory more to remember those names. But there's so much still in our community where we try to shorten those names, speak them wrong way. So let me tell you, my son's name is Aryan. And I
Spell it for me, please.
Okay, so you will ask for the spelling, I will spell it. I named it Aryan for a specific reason. The day he was born, I was like, he's born in this country. I don't want him to be called as Aaron, Arian, or whatever, so I put a double A with a specific insistence. Again, nothing, people still try their best. There are few people who really try their best and ask that name 3 times. But a lot of them try to just cut down and...
Because it's hard to remember.
Yeah, so
familiarity.
So I think that jogging the memory, the effort is the most important in everything for retaining and storage of this memory versus.
It's the usage. If I had to remember, your son's name is Aaryn, and pronounce it for me again?
Aryan.
Aryan, all right. If I had to remember Aryan's name, I would say it every time I addressed it, the same way I was making that demonstration with Ryan's name, or Naomi's name, or Claire's name. By repeating it, it will become automatic. I won't have to think about it. But I've encountered children, a little boy named Telecomunicus, who wasn't called Telly. He was called Telecomunicus. And I wanted to bop her, because you know how long it took him to learn to spell his name? All right. But I had to work to remember that, because I don't have a repertoire for it any more than I had for impressive or car. Neither word you remember. So the less familiarity there is, the more demand on memory there is. So just look, all right? This is the one that we see all the time. Today I saw a colleague I hadn't seen in years, and I said, Susan, write your email down for me. She said, not necessary. It's susan.smith@gmail. Well, you can't miss that. That's her name. And then she looked at me and said, don't forget the dot after Susan. Now it's in my head. I had to hold on to it. And as I walked to the car, I started to laugh and say, but how the devil do you spell her last name, which is not Smith? And I had to think about that. So it's everywhere, 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 everywhere. All right. When kids have weak working memory, they get overloaded and it impacts their learning negatively. It's just that simple. And we know that there are very particular difficulties in reading and math that are predictable by weak working memory. Remembering the sounds for the letters, the number, how to organize the syllables, remembering multiplication tables and holding information in your head, all of this. And in so many boys and girls, we see difficulties in working memory. I will tell you quickly about a young set of kids with whom I worked years ago. Her ability to memorize was extraordinary. Her general overall intellectual ability was very average, but she had the most extraordinary working memory capacity. That kid could hold on to information. It was unbelievable. Unbelievable. So I'll give you an example. I read a brief story to her. She was 12. I read a brief story to her, and I said, now tell me the story back. And to my amazement, this was a brief 3-paragraph, 2 sentences each story. That child all but repeated it verbatim. I'd not seen or heard that previously. Then I had to ask her 3 questions that were facts and 2 questions that were inference. I asked her the question, and this is what this youngster did. She was reading it to herself in her head. She'd memorized it with one listening. And she answered the first 3 questions, the fact questions. And then I asked her an inference question. She read it to herself twice, and then the child said to me, it doesn't say. So for years, she'd gotten by on a very potent memory because she could spit information back. But she couldn't figure out what were the crucial details. Detail plus detail plus detail equals inference.
Was that partly because she was working so hard just to do the basic stuff?
That kid could memorize anything and spit it right back, whether she understood it or not. So for years, and she was a very disciplined youngster, but a very average in intellectual ability. And she couldn't make inferences, couldn't draw conclusions with any ease. Now, I meet another child, the boy on the flip side has an attention deficit disorder of the non-hyperactive type, inattentive, so he had not been picked up before. Actually, on IQ testing, the boy had very superior intelligence. However, so picture an IQ of 135, he's smart, all right, verbal, but his working memory and his processing speed were very, very much lower, like 50 points lower. So he couldn't remember a darn thing. He would have to prepare and rehearsed, and his mother taught him in advance and then reviewed with him. And he was seen as not very bright. He couldn't hold on to information. He couldn't attend to anything, but he hadn't been picked up because he was quiet. You know, so think about this. All right, I'm going as fast as I can, Stacey. It's only a few more. All right. Working memory is everywhere in school, everywhere. Just take a careful look at all of the tasks in school that demand decent working memory. All right. And those are not, this is every day, all the time. These are the kinds of things that boys and girls have to do in school, holding an idea in mind while elaborating it, all right, like clarifying what you meant, remembering the beginning of the instruction while listening to the end of the instruction, all right, remembering the end while performing the beginning. What do I have to do next? She told me 3 parts. How many times have teachers said, that kid asked me what's next again? Why? Because he forgot what comes afterwards. This is all common behaviors. The most common one we see is the kid who raises his hand like I did with Ryan and then says, I forgot, because he forgot what the question was while he was looking for the answer. All right? And this is a quote. You ready? This is from a 10-year-old, where it says, holding together all the parts of a task while doing the task. This is a 10-year-old girl. There's no room for all that stuff in my head. Every single time I try to write, I forget what I'm doing. If I think about one thing like spelling, then I forget something else, like punctuation. Or when I have to think hard to figure out what I'm going to write in my essay, my handwriting gets real messy. All of that involves integrating those and holding them briefly if they lack automaticity. And when you are listening or reading, you have to hold on to what you just heard while you're listening to something new to integrate them. And if you don't have a good capacity, it's much, much harder. And that's true for fluency in reading as well. All right? So what we see, and this is for you as well as for the teachers, what we ask teachers to do is break things into parts, repeat, allow the kids some time for rehearsal. Give them the chance to practice. When you're doing tasks that have multiple parts, list them and show them on the board so the kids have them in front. And keep your classroom quiet. So if you want children's working groups, I implore teachers put them in the 4 corners of the room and have the groups of children facing the wall. Right? So they're sitting here and here and here and there, so that their voices go into the corner, not out into the general area of the room. And teach them mnemonic devices, memory devices like PEMDAS. I don't care how you make them up. It doesn't make a difference. You can do, yeah.
All right, what is direct instructional materials?
This is what we're talking about for teachers, where teachers are directly teaching concepts with structured materials. When I have integrated classes, some kids can learn from each other and learn on their own.
Right.
But some kids need to be taught directly. So that means I'm going to teach you, first we're going to learn the sounds of the short vowel A, for example. And we're going to do it with bat and cat and fat.
Middle school example.
Let me give you a middle school example. All right, so direct instruction in middle school is I'm going to teach you how to write a paragraph. All right, so what we're going to do in paragraph writing is let's generate some ideas about butterflies. All right, we just read a story about butterflies. So let's get some background information on butterflies. I want everybody to just tell me their ideas. I'm going to write them on the board. Okay, then the next step, after we get all of our ideas out, we're going to organize them into categories. And then after that, we're going to list them in order of importance in each category. And then this is what I'm planning in my lesson plan. I'm not telling all this to them. That's not me saying, I want you 3 girls to work together and come up with some ideas about butterflies, because we're going to be writing a paragraph about butterflies. That's not the same, because then I say, what is the most important thing that the three of you found out about butterflies? Butterflies have short lives. Okay. That's going to be our topic. Butterflies have short lives. Let's find now 3 details, 1, 2, and 3, about why butterflies have short lives. That's direct instruction. Very quickly.
Instead of them figuring it out themselves, you tell them how to figure it out. Okay.
I teach them how, because talking is not teaching. Just because you taught it surely does not mean that they learned. All right, what can you do? All right, now you've seen me doing this to you all night. Make a picture in your mind. Close your eyes for a second. All right? And if you have a teenager who thinks you're a nerd, and that happens, it goes away. It does go away. All right. Every now and again, one of my boys who are 31 will look at me and say, "Oh, he's so weird." Yes, but you love me anyway. It's true. But when they're teenagers, they can make a picture in your mind. Remember what it looks like. So tonight, all kidding aside, when I knew I had to turn back onto Hillside, I looked for a landmark, so I knew where to turn. Because the way that the navigational system in my car confuses me. Keep your instructions brief. You've heard me parsing all night, and repeat yourself. And I know it's annoying, just repeat it back to me. All right? It helps you remember. I don't do it because I want to be a pain in your neck, and I know I am. Just repeat, it helps you remember. Bless you. And then one that works all the time is if the kid teaches you, because it gives that youngster some authority and some sense of control. Wait, I'm a little confused about this. Nina, could you show me how to do it? Wait, I didn't get that part. Do it again. So that makes the child think about and actively engage in the process of learning something. And we played games. We played lots and lots of games. One of my children went to Windward because he has dyslexia. And we played lots and lots of word games in the car. Lots and lots of word games in the car. And as they became more effective readers, we played a hilarious game, all right? What is your name? Kelly. I'm sorry?
Kelly.
Okay. I have to come up with a word that starts with Y. Youthful. Kelly, you have to come up with a word that starts with L, because it was the last letter in my word.
Lollipop.
I have to come up with a word that starts with P. Pickle. You have to come up with a word that starts with E. So we would play these games, all right? And we play games of candies, right? M&M's, your turn. Skittles? Ooh, good one. Skittles. Mars bars. Hershey bars.
I'm totally lost now. Think of a candy.
Tootsie Rolls! So we, and again, fun games. And then you say, isn't that cool? It really helps you remember and think of words that start with those letters. And you stop being weird, all right? And chunks, just think of formulas. If I said to Kelly, Kelly, I will give you $10,000 in cash in 20. If you can repeat 49 numbers to me, you have 15 minutes to memorize those numbers. If she knew enough to break them into 7 phone numbers, it would be a hell of a lot easier to remember them and walk away with $10,000. 49 single numbers, you're out of luck. But 7-digit numbers, and you put them in sequence in order. I don't have $10,000 to give. And make connections, all right? Just getting to the end. Here's some take-home advice for you folks. Keep it short and sweet. Repeat. Ask your youngster to repeat the instructions back to you. And when your teenagers roll their eyes at you, which is what we all did to our own parents, say, go right ahead, but just repeat it. It will help you remember, sweetheart. Use your voice to underline important words and phrases when you're giving instructions. When I train teachers, I make a whole big deal about the power of a teacher's voice, because the teacher's voice is a form of underlining, and it can make an enormous difference. Chunk chunk, chunk, all right? Because if I say to you, I want you to remember 15 items, 4 animals, 6 instruments, 5 foods, 6 items of clothing. It's a heck of a lot easier than if I give you all of those in a random way. It makes a big difference. Be very, very alert to the complexity of the directions you give the kids and teach them by modeling that you do it, strategies that you use. You'll see what I'm doing in a minute, that help you remember. Now, what I want you to see is this. Your working memory is in fact your brain's Post-it note. That's what your working memory is. And some of you and some of your children have a Post-it note this size, and some of them have a Post-it note this size. This kid's in better shape because it's easier for him to remember, or like the little girl that I described to you before. And if your kid has this Post-it note size memory, you don't have to work so hard. And what you have to do is remember not to step out of your role as the parent and into your role as the teacher, because the children feel abandoned if you do. So you've got it embedded. I told this story the last time, but my kids, once I was fussing at them, they were about 9 or 10, about the way they were doing some homework, and I remember Russell looking up at me with a look that said, I wish you wouldn't. I said, Mom, we hate it when you use that Dr. Seufer voice with us. Because then I stopped being Mom. Right? So you have to be alert. And the idea is to embed these things into your practice. But keep this in mind, folks. Some kids have this, and they need more chunking, more repetition, more practice, more mnemonic devices. And some have this, and don't you wish we all did? Your working memory is your brain's Post-it note. You don't write letters on a Post-it note. You write yourself notes to help you remember. All right? That's what your working memory is.
Is your working memory generally fixed?
Sorry?
Is working memory generally a fixed thing, or can you help?
You can help through these strategies. It is what it is. Can you improve it? Its effectiveness through some of these strategies. Repetition.
Like the Post-it note always stays the same size, you're just finding ways
That's
to
right.
cram more
But
stuff
if in fact what I do with this, all right, is write in smaller letters or divide it into 5 parts and then use little cues to help myself remember, instead of on this one I can write it all out and still remember. It's the notion is to use it as effectively as possible and to compensate for it with the repetition, with the chunking, with the mnemonic devices, with other multi-sensory techniques that facilitate. And know that that's the way the kiddo is. Ergo, we accommodate and we build our skills. Yes, ma'am?
That's my question. So are we trying to improve the kids' working memory, or are we accommodating for them?
We are attempting to make it as efficient as it can be. All right? So here's a quick example, and I promise, Stacey, it'll be my last one. Here's a quick example. I gave this memory strategies test to a fellow. Here's what you do. You take 5 cards, and you lay them out, 5 pictures, they're 3 by 3. All right? And you lay them in front of the kid, and you give him a pad and a pencil, and you say, Dimitri, you have exactly 1 minute to memorize these pictures. All right? And you can write them down, you can do what you want, you can move them however you want, honey. But then, when the minute's up, I'm going to take the pictures away, and I'm going to take the paper and pencil away. Most kids can remember those 5 pictures without any difficulty. Then, so that's basically a bit of a sucker punch, because then you come out with the deck of cards. That is, in fact, 24 cards. All right, you shuffle them, you lay them out 4 by 6. They're all mixed up. And you say, you have 3 minutes, here's the pen. And then I watch what strategies the child uses. Why? Because, in fact, there are 4 categories with 6 items in each category. And if the child can recognize the categories, it's a devil of a lot easier for them to hold on. They get 3 trials, 3 turns to do that. And you watch, because some kids sit and just do this. They say them over and over and they don't move anything. They don't see the pattern. That's a child you have to teach in a different way than this board. You ready? He looks at this bunch of cards, grabs them, and immediately sees the categories. And he lumps them into clothes, transportation, animals, and food. Dang, I say, good. And then he starts to rehearse them over and over and over. He doesn't even write them. I take the cards away, I ask them to recite them to me. The kid gets 20 out of 24, and he's fit to be tied. I shuffle the deck, I lay them out, they're in a different order this time. He grabs the cards, he puts them in their categories, and you know what he did with the 6 pictures in each category? He put them in alphabetical order. And then he remembered all 24. He gave himself another cueing system. So what can you do to facilitate memory? You use mnemonic devices. You use the chunking. You use repetition. You use things like PEMDAS. I can't make you working memory bigger than it is, but I can make it a devil of a lot more efficient, because a lot of the time we don't use all we have. All right, folks?
Thank you.
You're welcome, everybody. Say goodnight, Tracy.